We have two lines of work, simply put. One is the representation function, the public affairs, lobbying, government affairs policy work in Brussels and in other various bodies at European level. And the second part is identifying the challenges of the industry and advancing towards solving them. That's what we try and do.
Welcome to the ICOMIA Podcast, where we're supporting the marine industry's most important conversations.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the ICOMIA Podcast, sponsored by Akzo Nobel. A big thank you to them for helping these conversations take place. This podcast is all about the industry's most important conversations, and today we're here with Philip Easthill. Nice to see you, Philip.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
Very, very well, thank you. Could you just introduce yourself, what you're involved in, and kind of profile the organization?
Sure. So, my name is Philip Easthill. I have the honor of running European boating industry, which is the European Association of the Recreational Boating Industry. We have two lines of work, simply put. One is the representation function, the public affairs, lobbying, government affairs policy work in Brussels and in other various bodies at European level. And the second part is identifying the challenges of the industry and advancing towards solving them. That's what we try and do.
That's quite a serious mission. Quite in depth.
Yeah.
And how do you actually go about doing that? So let's start with, how do you collaborate with ICOMIA?
Yeah.
And then we'll go into a bit more detail of the reality of how that works.
Sure. So we have a lot of key partners to what we do. And one of those key partners is ICOMIA and EBI, the marine engine arm. And we work a lot together. We have a strategic partnership agreement. We have identified what are the challenges that we can solve best at European level with our work in the European Parliament, in the European Commission, with politicians, with events and whatnot. And ICOMIA has identified its best points, its benefits, where it can work best, which is at this standardization level, the technical level, the global level, bringing all of the industry together. And we align on that. We spend a lot of time together. We've got a lot of projects together. And it's a great collaboration.
Yeah, so I always look at these organizations as a really quite incredible source of knowledge, often from people that have been in the sector for years and years, have seen booms and changes and the evolution of the whole industry. And then we're this tiny industry in the wide world.
We are.
That's the recreational boating industry. So what topics and what's the big focus at the minute? A project that's forming kind of a lot of the work.
Sure. So I look at our work as translation work, interpretation work. So it's bottom up to identify the challenges and the issues of the industry and bringing them to policymakers, for example, in Brussels. But also, let's call it top down, to inform what's happening in Brussels, all of these political buzzwords, all of this complicated regulation, and translating it down to a company, to a small or medium-sized company, to explain to them what all of that means, what's coming, and how we're trying to support it. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do. One of the big projects, I'm talking about ICOMIA, we're doing together, is on lifecycle assessment. Okay. So giving companies, giving yards and suppliers the opportunities to understand the environmental impact of their products and improving environmental performance. That's what we're trying to do. So it's about giving the tools, giving the opportunities to yards to do the right thing.
So I think to demonstrate why this works so well is explain what would happen if that wasn't there.
Yeah, so there's a lot of expectations from consumers, from stakeholders, from policymakers to do the right thing on the environmental side, right?
Yeah.
It's incredibly important for everything we do. All industries have to tackle it, and we do too. So if we don't develop our own solutions, others will decide for us.
Right.
And that's the challenge.
So they will be forced upon the industry, and if they don't fit into the reality of the economics of the industry or like niche scenarios, when a recreational boat is in a certain location and looking at how it's manufactured and its end of life process, everything needs to be understood.
Yes.
So that the regulation, when it comes in place, actually fits. It doesn't just destroy the industry or have a really negative impact.
And we are a niche of a niche, probably.
Yeah.
But within that niche, we have such a huge array of products and companies, and we need to make sure it fits for all of them. So that's why we think that we, as industry bodies, we're best placed to be that link between the companies and the policymakers, and we can develop ideas that we can bring to the policymakers.
So what kind of ideas are coming up when you look at life cycle analysis?
Yeah.
what do you do? Kind of bring it to the table and say, how are we going to do this?
Yes.
What kind of suggestions are made, and how do you consider them?
Yeah, so we spend a lot of time trying to understand what's important for the European Union in terms of regulation. We want to look at greenhouse gas emissions, circularity, and many other issues around this as well.
Yeah.
And we say there's not just one solution to tackle all of these challenges around the environment.
Unfortunately not, yeah.
Unfortunately not. We would love to be one solution and then we're done with it. But really the idea is to present many solutions and give every yard the opportunity to innovate, to invest where it's best, where they think they have their benefits. And the best way to display that is then through a life cycle assessment. Because life cycle assessment means you understand the environmental footprint, and if you make a change in one part of the life cycle, let's say you exchange from one material in the composite to another material, you can then see the benefits, ideally from a life cycle perspective. You see climate change impact goes down, land use impact goes down, fossil fuel use goes down, and you present those numbers.
Yeah.
And traditionally in other industries, like in automotive, maybe you're only looking at what comes out the end, the tailpipe emissions.
Yeah.
But if we do that in our industry, and the ICOMIA preparing our future study has shown this, if we do that in our industry, we will be lost because it's such a complicated endeavor to really entirely decarbonize the emissions at the use phase.
Yeah. And so once these factors are considered, what's the next step? Do you then go to Belgium and present it to the regulators and say, here's some guidance that would really suit this industry? Or what happens?
Yeah.
Educate me.
Yeah, so we have a very unique opportunity because we are ahead of a regulation now, and we can bring those solutions to Brussels, to the policymakers. So we already are telling them that we are working on it. That's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And we're telling them, wait, let's be ready, and then we will be able to present the finished product, and you can ideally adapt it into the legislation.
Yeah, so by the time of the legislation being implemented and forced upon all companies around the industry, companies, organizations like the SMEs and the one-person companies, small family groups, as well as the large corporations, are going to be able to prepare themselves and also not kind of be caught off guard or be really negatively impacted by the legislation coming in.
That's it. And I think it's like that. We always have these small businesses, the Americans call them mom and pop businesses.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to think about. A lot of these companies are like that.
Yeah.
We have some bigger corporates, but we also have a lot of these small businesses.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure the regulation, the tools, all of it fits for a company with a family business, basically building a couple of boats per year.
Yeah. And so what are these best practices that are starting to be talked about that may well fit?
Well, I think the interesting thing is if you look at the entire life cycle, you can make incremental gains everywhere, and you can pull these levers and improve every single bit.
Yeah.
And by doing every single bit, you actually improve a lot of the entire environmental performance.
Yeah.
So it's about the raw materials, where we get them from. It's about the production. So do we use solar PV panels on top of the yard? What energy do we source? What do we produce? What are the practices we use in the yard? But also the propulsion. What propulsion do we put in? What fuel is available at the marinas in a wider scope, more than just one marina, but in a wider scope at the end of life. So there's a lot of opportunities. So the answer from ICOMIA's preparing a future study was there is no one-size-fits-all solution, but I do think we have all of the solutions to fit the problem in the long term. So I think if we reverse it, I think it's quite a positive picture. But step by step, we can make incremental gains on the environmental performance and thereby build the business case. That's really important. We have to make sure our products remain accessible. We've had a huge inflation increase in the last years. We have to make sure products remain accessible, otherwise we will lose the market. We will be losing out to our competitors in other leisure industries and other hobbies. We have to stay accessible, but by making incremental gains and investing money where it's best invested, I think we can make those changes and improve environmental performance.
Yeah, because if we really do carry that out, that means there's not going to be this, I was going to say doomsday type thing, where somebody comes in and actually it's devastating for the industry. Instead, it's a bit more of an evolution. It's a gradual change in the right direction, and then step by step we get to where we need to be.
And by doing life cycle assessment, by using data, by using scientific information, we can plan ahead. We can even make our own targets and say by year X we will be able to make this or that improvement, and that's something that we can deliver and it's transparent. We can be assessed against it, and we will have the belief of our stakeholders or policymakers to say, yeah, these guys, they're really doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think we might jump around a little bit here, but I want to touch on eco-design.
Yeah.
It's something that we're starting to see a lot of around the industry, where products are brought to market with their sustainability credentials right at the forefront of why it's being brought to market, how it's actually marketed and presented and advertised to the industry. How does this type of activity facilitate eco-design across the industry?
Yeah, so it's about giving yards the tools to do eco-design, to replace materials and see the benefits, ideally from an environmental standpoint and from a financial business case standpoint, very important. But at the same time, we know that regulation is coming in Europe and in the UK and surely other parts of the world as well, which says that you can't just claim whatever you want about the green side. Your products are not automatically green, but you
need to be able to prove it. It's got to be transparent.
Exactly. You have to be providing the studies, the data, and otherwise you will be in a serious liability problem. So this is coming. It's called the Green Claims Directive. It's already on the table. It's coming in a few years. We have to be ready for that. And it will stop the greenwashing. I hope it doesn't stop the communication, because that's really important.
Right.
So we need to facilitate that communication.
So it's helping it along. It's guidance. To make it happen.
Exactly.
All right. Super. Thank you very much for your insights, Phil. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah. Thanks again to AXA Nobel for helping making these important conversations take place. All being well, we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.